Welcome to the very last video of 2017, and I thought there would be no better way to wrap it up than finish out my worst card in every Structure Deck series with the Part 4. And boy, do we add a lot of fun cards today. So basically, if you haven't seen the series before, make sure to go check out parts 1 through 3. But what we do is we take a look at every single Structure Deck released in the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. Today, we're taking a look at all the ones between Master of Pendulum all the way through Wave of Light. And we look through the entire card list of each Structure Deck on a live stream, and then kind of have discussions about which card is the worst card in that entire Structure Deck in the context of if you were only playing with that Structure Deck. Although many of these cards in general are not very good, the real sort of perspective we're looking at is how good they are in the context of the Structure Deck that they come in, because Konami is advertising Structure Decks as tournament ready, so the cards that are really, really bad sort of tarnish that reputation. Anyway, let's start with Master of Pendulum. Now, this one was very popular with competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Players, but it had a weird choice because it had Recover. Now, Recover is a really good tuner monster that a lot of people have used in Dark Synchro decks, but it's kind of a strange choice. Well, it's actually a very strange choice in a Pendulum deck, because Recover really gets a huge bonus when you can deplete your extra deck lower than your opponent's. Now, the problem with that is that in this deck, you're playing with Pendulum monsters, and Pendulum decks are the only type of deck that actually add monsters to the extra deck, making Recover pretty bad. Almost every single time you have Recover, it'll simply be a level 1 tuner without any effect, because you usually won't be able to revive it. And while that's not terrible, I mean, this deck at the very least has a Synchro monster to summon. Overall, this is just a very odd choice for a tuner monster to include. I can kind of see what they're going with. They want to give you some sort of self-revival effect, but that self-revival effect is directly counterintuitive compared to the Pendulum summoning mechanic, so I'm not sure why this was the tuner monster that they ended up going with. Next, we have Emperor of Darkness. This one was tough because a lot of the cards in it are very good. This was the Monarch Structure Deck, and obviously very competitive, just like Master of Pendulum, but there was a weird card in it, and that is Dzeeff. Now, this card has been sort of a meme ever since it came out, and for good reason. It's a card that has a 1 in 2 chance of being okay, a 1 in 6 chance of being really good, and a 2 in 6 chance of being utter garbage. So you roll a 6-sided die, and then you, depending on what you roll, it has some cool effects. So if you roll a 2, 3, or 4, it's an MST. That's not that exciting. Probably should just play MST at that point. If you happen to roll a 5, it's a better Twin Twisters, and that's amazing. But if you happen to roll a 1 or 6, not only do you not destroy any back row, you also take 1,000 damage. Now, this is like the same sort of statistics as Snipe Hunter, and Snipe Hunter was really good when it came out, but it destroyed cards on the field, not just back row, and it was either going to hit or miss, and it had a 2 out of 3 chance of hitting, and that was way back when Cyberdark Impact came out. Dzeeff is not that old of a card. It's a fairly old card, but it's not that old of a card, and by the time that this Structure Deck came out, it obviously was not something you wanted to be playing. You definitely should just play Cosmic Cyclone, Galaxy Cyclone, Twin Twisters, or even just play MST. The potential upside of the 1 in 6 of this card hitting 2 cards is simply not worth the potential to completely miss at all. And yeah, Dzeeff, it's never going to be good. Kind of sad because it's a really cool artwork, but yeah, it's terrible. It's not worth the chance. Next up, we have Rise of the True Dragon Structure Deck, and okay, so I mentioned in the last video that Foxfire was sort of unique because it was on the whole series twice, but today we actually have another instance of that because this deck also had Decoy Dragon. Now, I've mentioned this in every single video that I've talked about Decoy Dragon, but I'm going to mention it right now for anyone leaving a comment about this card. This card has to be face up when it's attacked. That's how it works. Every single time I make a video talking about Decoy Dragon, someone comments and says, well, isn't this okay? You can just set it face down and then they can attack it and you special summon a guy. That's not how it works. It has to be face up, making this card really, really bad. Your opponent is simply never going to attack it until they have removal. They'll probably have removal, and if they don't have removal, the only instance they would want to attack this thing, or when they would attack this thing, I should say, is when they actually don't care about what you're reviving. Decoy Dragon is terrible. Yes, it has great artwork, but man, now we have 2 cards that actually made this list twice, which I think means they're like pretty darn bad. Moving on, we have Structure Deck Yu-Gi-Moto. Now, I haven't covered a lot of character decks in this because I'm only covering official structure decks, but actually the Yu-Gi-Moto and the Seto Kaiba decks were official structure decks, not starter decks. And in this one, they had Mystic Box. This card is terrible. It's just a horrible minus in card economy, and while that generally isn't the only thing you have to look at when you look at a card, this also loses tempo, and it doesn't really do anything. Man, there are probably some really stupid combos while giving your opponent bad cards with it, but they're probably terrible and inconsistent, and almost in every single scenario, you'd be better off using Smashing Ground, or Hammer Shot, or Fissure, or Dark Hole, or Regeki, or Interrupted Kaiju Slumber, or literally any other piece of spot removal. Mystic Box is just not worth it. I know there are going to be people saying, oh, I got some sick combo where you give your opponent your Blue Eyes Chaos Max Dragon and then you Magic Cylinder it. Can that even, I don't think, can Chaos Max be targeted? I haven't read that card in a while. But anyway, this card's bad. Don't try to even argue that it's not bad. It's just like the worst piece of spot removal ever, considering the card that you remove, you instantly have to replace it with one of your own cards, which seems pretty bad. And it is pretty bad. Next, in the Structure Deck Seto Kaiba version, once again, we have a deck that sort of seems like a starter deck in that it has a lot of bad cards in it, but it is a structure deck, and obviously it had like the ABCs, which are really good. The worst card, though, was the Flute of Summoning Dragon. Now, there are a couple reasons. This card is just not very good in general. There's not enough of an upside, even back when it first came out. But there's only one copy of Lord of D, and there's only one copy of Flute and Summoning Dragon. There's no way to search either one of them. So you have to specifically have those 2 cards in your hand, which are unsearchable one-ofs, and then you also have to draw a couple dragon monsters that you want to summon, and this deck didn't have a lot of worthwhile dragons. Many of them were level 4 or lower, and even the ones that weren't level 4 or lower weren't very impactful, so you have to have the specific setup of 2 unsearchable one-ofs and 2 dragon monsters that you want to actually summon with this card, and that's still not very good. Not to mention, this deck really is focusing on machine monsters, not dragons, so the dragons that it does have, you're just not going to see very often. This really is more like a union deck, so the fact that it has, I mean, I get that this is like a TV show card, but Flute of Summoning Dragon really makes no sense in the context of trying to play that deck competitively, and even if you were playing it in a friendly match against the Yugi deck, it'd probably be the card you wanted to draw the least, because it's simply never going to go off. It's such a small chance of that happening. You have to have a very specific card at a specific time. Makes this card really inconsistent and not very impactful when it actually does resolve. Now, we have Pendulum Domination. This one had, when we were going through here in the live stream, I was introduced to a whole bunch of cards I hadn't read before. I'm not really familiar with the DDD archetype, but by far the worst one was DD Proud Ogre. I think this card has really cool artwork. I've also never seen it before in my life, and when I read its effect, I realized why. Its pendulum effect is bad. It doesn't do anything. It just increases the attack of a monster, which is like basically a worse Axe of Despair. Yes, it is an 8 scale. That's not super relevant. DDDs have plenty of pendulum scales that are really good. So then its monster effect only activates when you normal summon it, and it's a level 6 monster, so you have to tribute summon it. I suppose you could use Mausoleum of the Emperor if you really wanted to. And even if you do manage to normal summon, all it does is special summon one face-up Dark Pendulum monster from your extra deck, so pretty specific there. And then you can only special summon DD monsters for the whole turn. This card's not very good. Even when DDs were at full power, no one was playing this card. And even in the super casual builds of DDDs, I have not seen this card pop up, which is a shame because I do really like this artwork. It's just kind of sad that it's attached to such a terrible card. Next up, we have the Machine Reactor structure deck. Now, this is the second Ancient Gear structure deck, and this one was tough because I don't think many of these cards were like super terrible. I mean, this obviously isn't as good as a Dynasty structure deck, but it didn't have that many bad cards. However, Machine King 3000 BC. Man, Konami, what are you doing with this card design? So it's a trap monster. You special summon it, and it has 1000 attack and 1000 defense. It's a level 4 machine monster. You cannot normal summon or special summon another monster during the turn you activate it, which means you basically have to use this during your opponent's end phase. And then what do you get for that epic payoff of playing a card that you can't use on your first turn, that you can't really use on your opponent's first turn, and then you have to wait until your opponent's end phase to use? The great payoff is that once per turn during your main phase, you can tribute one machine monster. This card gains attack equal to the tributed monster's attack until the end phase. So this card, for all those hoops, basically gives a monster 1000 attack, but also gets rid of the monster. It's literally a worse acts of despair, which I know is kind of weird because we just talked about a worse acts of despair, but this is an even worse acts of despair. It's absolutely terrible. This card is so bad, and it's like the last card released in the Machine King series of monsters, and yet by far it's the worst. Like, you have to jump through 1000 hoops, and then it doesn't do anything. Kind of weird. Next up, we have the Dino Smasher's Fury structure deck, which is the dinosaur counterpart to the Ancient Gear structure deck. And once again, a lot of these cards, pretty good. I like the structure deck a lot. Just in general, I think it's a really good option because almost every single card in the deck is at least kind of playable. However, Chewbone, what, Konami, what are you doing with Chewbone? Why is this in it? Okay, I get why this card is in here. The combo, the quote-unquote combo you're doing with Chewbone is setting this card, and then it survives the turn somehow, and then you flip it, give your opponent some tokens, okay, in their defense position, which means when you summon Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, you can do 3000 damage by getting rid of them. The bad news is that's never going to happen, because you're never going to hold your Ultimate Conductor just to do 3000 damage. You're just going to summon it because it's a really good disruptive and aggressive monster. You're not going to be waiting around for Chewbone to use your Ultimate Conductor. It's like the best card in the deck. You're not going to just wait around on it. But more importantly, this card just gives your opponent 3 tokens that they can use for link materials. So if you set it and then it doesn't survive the turn, which is very possible, your opponent can just get a link 3 for free. This card is horribly outdated even when this structure deck came out. Just because there weren't link monsters, I'm going to give it a slight pass, but if you played this nowadays, you would instantly get destroyed unless you could get that very specific the Ultimate Conductor Tyranno combo, and even then, that combo isn't really good, because when you can summon an Ultimate Conductor, you're usually applying enough pressure anyway to where you don't have to go out of your way to give your opponent things to destroy. Now, in the next one, we have Structure Deck Cypress Link. And why was this not a starter deck? I mean, I get that we only get like one starter deck a year, so they wanted to release it. But this deck, oh, geez. But the worst card in it is Premature Return. This card is basically all the worst properties of DDR, Different Dimension Reincarnation, with some added bad properties to it. So it's a trap card, which automatically means it's slow. You banish a card from your hand instead of discarding one, so that's obviously not good. And then you target a banished monster and special summon it in face down defense position. Wow, this can really combo with your Chewbone. No, this card is just so weird. It's like every single step of the effect is purposely made to be terrible. Also, I do want to point out that you can't activate cards that can't resolve yet. So you can't have no banished cards when you activate this, and then special summon thing you banish. You do have to have one card banished already. I can see virtually no applications for this card that aren't laughable at best. Even in decks that want to have face-down defense mission monsters, you wouldn't even play this card. I'm thinking of like Shaddolls or Subterrors or something, even Crawlers. I don't know why this card exists. It's a terrible, slow, -1 that doesn't accomplish anything. And why it was in the Cyber Structure deck, I have no idea. Lastly, and I wasn't even going to cover this one because it hasn't come out by the time that this video has come out, but the full list has been leaked, so I guess we'll go over it. The Wave of Light structure deck is a deck all about counter fairies, so you got fairy monsters, you got counter trap cards, and also you have DD Sprite for some reason. This deck has no synchro monsters. This deck also has no synergy with DD Sprite. why is this in here? This card doesn't even do anything in like actual Yu-Gi-Oh, but especially in the context of this structure deck that has nothing you actually want to synchro summon or can synchro summon. But even if you did have synchro monsters, I would argue that GD Sprite is still not very good. I don't know why this card is in here at all. I can't remember the list because it's been a while since I looked at it. I don't know if it had effect failure or not, but if it didn't have effect failure, it definitely should have instead of GD Sprite. This card is just such a weird choice. This is almost as weird as the recover choice in a Pendulum deck, because this is a card that is made for aggressive synchro summoning, and it's in a deck without any synchro monsters, and also a deck that's really meant to control the board, not to rush your opponent. Anyway, though, that's going to wrap it up. Now, we have done 6+ hours of live streams to get to this point where we have all 4 videos done, and it's been a wild ride. I really couldn't think of any other video that I'd much rather end 2017 with. Thank you so much for all the people that came out to live streams, were part of the discussion, and let me come to the conclusions that we came to. And yeah, I'm excited for 2018. We will be returning the Bad Structure Deck series. I know a lot of people have been asking for that. We haven't done one in a couple weeks now, but I want to get this series done before the end of 2017. So I will see you guys later.